You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to talk about a breaking news thing that just happened before we started recording. Patrick Williams apparently has a sprained shoulder that could leave him out of today's game against the Brooklyn Nets. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to get into, is the Chicago Bulls' current level of play sustainable, or is it more sus? We're going to talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. I'm joined today by Big Kev, host of Chicago White Sox and Chicago Cubs Central, as well as he contributes to Chicago Chi-Town Sports Central and NBA. Listen, you got a lot of you're gaining the resumes, just building there, Kev. How you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm just trying to be like you, nephew. I'm trying to be like you. Ain't nothing wrong with it.
We appreciate you, man. Today's episode is brought to you guys by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Kev, this literally just happened. Part of the reason why we're late on today's episode is because I was live over on Central talking about this. But Patrick Williams is now listed as questionable for today's game against the Brooklyn Nets because of an apparent shoulder injury. Now, he joins already Zach, who has a sprained AC joint in his shoulder, which we'll talk about at the end of this show, Lonzo Ball, Jalen Smith. These are all key guys to the Bulls rotation that are out, that could be out in this game. How are you feeling about this latest injury to P. Will?
I mean, I'm not going to act like it's not frustrating. The Bulls are playing basketball that's worth watching to start the season. And Patrick Williams is a part of that. Jalen Smith is a part of that. Zach LaVine. But as far as Patrick Williams is concerned, he's starting to look aggressive. The first couple of games, you're like, man, what's going on with you, P. Will? Why are you not doing what you're supposed to be doing? You got your contract extension, and you out there looking like the P. Won't, as they were calling him in the past. I don't like the fact that it's another setback for him. At least it's not a lower extremity injury, which has kind of been plaguing the Bulls for the last couple of seasons. But at the end of the day, we need all hands on deck. It's going to be a big game tonight as well. And it would be good to have people because Brooklyn playing better than I thought they would. They're out there playing some good basketball out in Brooklyn. So you need them out there, man. It's just not fun to see your players go down, especially the ones that are going down lately.
For sure. I mean, and it's the growing list, right? And it's all little nagging things. And this could very well, like one thing that I pointed out on yesterday's episode, Kev, was that it seems like this new Bulls medical staff, because I think some people don't realize we do have a new medical staff, they're playing it a lot more cautious than what we're used to with the Bulls medical staff. And it could just very well be that. Like I said, this is the early part in the season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And we could just see this medical staff saying, all right, it's early. Listen, we're on the road to Brooklyn. We're facing Brooklyn. Let's go ahead and sit you down. I think we have 2 days off after this as well. So it could just be more of a precautionary thing. And if that's the case, I'm not mad at it. Yes, I want to see the players on the court. Yes, we're trying to build chemistry. But at the end of the day, it's like you're going to miss a few games. It's going to happen to every player. And if this is kind of just us getting out the way and doing what we need to do so these little minor things don't turn into larger term things, that's a smart move, especially like when you hear Lonzo, like he had a grade 1, grade 2 wrist sprain. And then they immobilized it. And then when he came out and talked, he said, well, yeah, if it kept moving, it could have turned into a grade 3 sprain. And I could have had to have a cast on for a longer period of time. So if this is what the medical staff is going to do, I know it sucks, but I'm for one happy for it. Because if you've been a Bulls fan as long as I have, you no hyperbole, Kev, our former medical staffs almost killed players before. Luol Deng almost died, bro.
That is absolutely true. And, it's been a light week for the Chicago Bulls. They played Monday, Wednesday. They'll play tonight, and then they're off till Monday again and Wednesday again. So to your point, they got a back-to-back next week as well with the Mavericks and the Timberwolves and the travel in between that game, going to Dallas and then coming back home to play the Timberwolves. So at the end of the day, they could be just taking it, and rightfully so. We know that the Chicago Bulls have been a brittle team over the last 3 or 4 seasons. Not just Zach, not just Lonzo, but even Kobe White, even Vucevic has missed time. Players that really, really matter for this franchise and are important for winning games are going down. So if they're taking Aaron on the side of caution, I can't be mad at them for that, bro.
Yeah, you just can't be. Like you want to protect your players. It does suck because of the injury history with the Bulls, but like you got to take care of your guys, man. Let me ask you this though. You said it and you pointed it out that Patrick Williams is slowly becoming more aggressive offensively. Billy Donovan has used him greatly defensively, like to guard multiple positions. Patrick Williams is actually quietly having an excellent defensive season, but we're starting to see him be a little bit more aggressive offensively. Are you worried? We've typically seen P. Will comes back slowly from injuries. Are you worried about the progression that we've made with his aggressive level over the last couple of games? Now we're gonna have to reset that deck to get him to be aggressive again.
I'm not just worried about it. I'm flat out certain that he's going to be it's going to have to reset because history is going to dictate that. And the reality is, from a psychological standpoint, he's one of those guys that got to work himself back up to a certain level of basketball play ability. So I'm not going to sit here and expect him to come back. He started the season slow, and then he's going to sit down for how long? God knows how long, maybe just a couple of games, and come back and have to reset his mentality more than just the physical aspects of things. Because we all know that when it comes to P. Will, it's a mental thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how it is just all mental with P. Will. P. Will has all the freaking potential in the world, man. But that's the part of the game that's always hard. Like, you don't know what a player's mentality is going to be. That's why, like, I think so many people appreciate Manas Busilis, even though if we're just being realistic, he hasn't looked great out there on the court. Like, he hasn't had a lot of minutes to work his rhythm out, but he has the mentality of somebody that you could feel pretty safe and comfortable in saying is he's going to maximize potential because he has that edge. Like, so you never know how that's going to impact the player's game, and P. Will is a perfect example of that. But it is what it is when it comes down to that. Jalen Smith, me and you haven't talked about Jalen Smith while we're on the topic of injuries. For big men, lower body extremity injuries, the fact that it started off with a sprained ankle that he got cleared from, then it was a knee. I think it's on the same leg. I can't remember off the top of my head. Are you a little bit worried? Because Jalen Smith, basically his athleticism has been such a weapon for the Chicago Bulls team. Are you worried that even when he is cleared, if he's not fully ready to go and a little timid on that could kind of hurt what we're doing here as well?
Not necessarily hurt, because the Bulls are just playing a different brand of basketball, and they kind of have the next man up mentality right now. So I'm not expecting too big of a drop off. We saw Adama Sanogo step up and play pretty well the other day versus Orlando. I just don't know. I don't know enough about Jalen Smith to determine, how he's going to bounce back. Like so he's only played 4 games with the team. He's a recent acquisition. But I do think that he needs to take it easy. He's a big man. So you don't want to go out there and rush it. If this was like March or April, then maybe I would say, no, get out there and play basketball. But right now, take your time, get healthy, and let's see what some of these young guys can do in his stead.
That's a fact. Who would you start with, especially with Zach potentially out, Patrick Williams potentially out? What starting 5 are you rolling out there if those two guys cannot play?
You're going to see Dalen Terry. I think Ayo's definitely starting for sure. The next man up, I don't think it's going to be Julian Phillips. It should be, but knowing Coach Billy Donovan, is probably going to be Torrey Craig. I would like for it to be Julian Phillips, but it's probably going to be Torrey Craig. What you thinking?
It's a great question because, I would, if Torrey Craig had been playing this, like we just saw Torrey Craig get in his first game last game. And so it seems like Billy Donovan is comfortable with him not being in the rotation. I kind of think that it would, like, Billy Donovan is trusting Julian Phillips, man. I don't see why that would stop. I personally don't see why that would stop. Now, unless you just want a veteran in there to kind of stabilize, especially if you have to start Ayo Dosunmu as well, maybe then you do go Torrey Craig. But as of right now, I'm going to say it's going to be Julian Phillips. That's what I would say.
It better be Julian Phillips.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about it. That corner 3 is solid. He's athletic. He's willing to get in there with among the trees and get rebounds. I'm expecting to see Julian Phillips. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and even if Julian doesn't start, we should see a lot of Julian minutes. I don't know if you got to see my daily episode today on Central before the breaking news, but I went into like heavy analytics and what lineups are telling us. And Julian Phillips is part of, like, out of the Bulls' 5 best lineups, he's part of 4 of them.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so, like, he's just, because of his two-way versatility and things like that, I just think Julian Phillips offers a lot of different versatility in what he brings in defense and everything else. So I would love to see Julian Phillips be the guy there. We'll see what Billy Donovan does. We know Billy Donovan sees the world very differently. All I know is that it better not be Chris Duarte is what I know.
It better not be Leroy either. Better not.
No, it better not be Leroy Javon Carter, the doppelganger, as you call him. Because yeah, that's just a level of frustration that I'm not ready to deal with yet. That's for damn sure. But next up, we're going to be talking about the Bulls' level of play, which was supposed to be our lead topic before the injury. But we're going to ask: is the Bulls' current level of play sustainable, or is it sus? Is it more sus than sustainable? We'll get into all that, but first we got to get into the message from our sponsor, and that is who do we got today? See, you got to check these things before. And I was so excited about the news. We got to get to the best for one of our sponsors, and that's FanDuel. All right, Bulls fans, I've been telling you guys about FanDuel for quite a while. You already know they're one of the most consistent sponsors we have here, and you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That means you got to still make a smart bet. And how does FanDuel help you make a smart and informed bet? Is because on the same page where you get your bets, you can see everything that you need to make an informed bet. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right, Kev. It's a good beat. It's a good beat. I make good things. I make good stuff, bro. That's all I can say there. But I thought this was an interesting question because the Bulls have started off hot, and we got players that aren't necessarily playing in a way that's sustainable. Vooch shooting over 50% from three. You got Josh Giddey shooting 50% from three. Like, those things aren't necessarily sustainable. But as those players may be coming back down to earth, you got players like Io, who's just starting to get in rhythm offensively. Julian Phillips, who's really just getting into, he's playing his first 5 games of consistent minutes. We got to see how that's going to develop. The Bulls are ranking very well in all categories. We're leading the NBA in rebounds per game. We're forcing turnovers at a good rate. We're not putting teams on the free throw line. Our turnovers themselves have gotten down on our side of the ball. Is the Bulls level play, do you think overall, as a totality in the team, is it sustainable?
Absolutely, it's sustainable. I mean, they just got to stay bought in. The problem that the Bulls have had over the last couple of seasons is that they just had a disconnect with what the coach wanted to do and what they actually did on the court. There was a disconnect. They would say, okay, shake their head, yes, and then go out there and do whatever they wanted to do. They weren't back cutting, for example. They weren't shooting the three when they were supposed to. They were shooting the threes when they weren't supposed to. It was a lot of things that was going on with the Chicago Bulls that just didn't reflect what Billy Donovan and his staff wanted them to do. So the reason why I believe it's sustainable is we've seen them come out right now and be mentally focused enough to do, even when it hasn't worked, right? They shot a lot of threes and missed a lot of threes. They played fast-paced and had a lot of turnovers, but they played the same style of basketball in each of their 5 games of the season, and it just seems like they're ready to go. And again, I know we've said this enough or a lot of times, but the subtraction of DeMar DeRozan opens up the floor for everybody else to cater to their strengths, to play to their strengths, whether it's Nikola Vucevic or even Zach LaVine, and not have to worry about or look over his shoulder at the de facto alpha on the team and that wants the ball in his hand. So, yeah, I think it's sustainable.
And to your point about the style of play that Billy wants us to play, he said this: we've just got to try to wear teams down and try to generate things through fatigue and just try to make it a game in a lot of ways. And I think that we've seen that. When you look at the Bulls and how quick they're moving, teams are having to try to match the Bulls' pace just to get up shots, because the Bulls are getting up shots. And while the Bulls are hitting threes at a decent rate, that math problem that was there for the Bulls last year where they're only making 8 threes where the other team's making 15, and so there's such a big discrepancy there, that's not existing. And then when you add into that the pace and the quickness and the decision-making, how we're spreading the ball around, we're top 3 in the league in assist percentage. Like, all those things are combining to where teams are having to give so much effort just to match the Bulls' energy, that with the Bulls having the conditioning that they have, we are seeing teams wear down. That's why you see the Bulls able to get back in games with large deficits. That's why you're seeing fourth quarters of the Bulls just completely killing teams in the fourth quarters of games, because they're running out of juice.
Oh, yeah, it's a matter of attrition, and it goes back to training camp. These gentlemen had a 14-second shot clock, and I'm not sure if people understand what that means. That means you up and down the court, up and down the court, up and down the court. it's just not going to be something that some teams can keep up with if they're there at practice taking it easy. They're not running. They're not getting their wind up because it's still the beginning of the season. And you can tell that the Chicago Bulls have that wind right now that some of these other teams don't. They ran out of gas in Memphis. They ran out of gas with Orlando as well. Those teams had 20-point leads, and the Chicago Bulls just kept chugging until they took over and won those games.
Yeah, and right now the Bulls are scoring the 7th most points in fourth quarters of any team in the NBA. The Bulls are averaging almost 30 points scored in fourth quarters. That's crazy.
Considering that they only scored 16 the other day, that's even more crazy.
Exactly. And the Bulls right now, through the 5 games they've played, they've outscored teams in the fourth quarter 3 out of those 5 games.
And
it's a weapon.
That's why they're 3-2.
Yeah, it's a weapon. So shout out to the Bulls for exploiting something, and that's those little things that the Bulls have not been able to even try to do because we played such an antiquated style of basketball the last 3 or 4 years that the Bulls couldn't try to play something like that, using that to your advantage, using fatigue to your advantage. That's the next level. So, hey, use all the advantages you have there.
Absolutely, and it's not something that we've been able to see. So I'm excited to see the Bulls take steps forwards in multiple categories so far this season. So yeah, I believe it's sustainable, man. It's health matters though, right?
Health is a big part of that as well. Absolutely.
So if they can get whole, when they're whole, I think it's sustainable. But they're gonna have to adjust some things with these other guys being out.
That's a fact there. Kev, how do you feel about the job Billy Donovan and this coaching staff has done? I know you mentioned the 14-second shot clock. That has been absolutely huge for this team to start the season. But when you look at the intricacies within the game, because one thing that we have always talked about, me, you, C-Dub, everybody we've always talked about is like the Bulls haven't really been good at adjusting to what other teams are doing. And while I'm not saying they've done it the best yet, it does seem like there's been a concerted effort to be better at that. And it also seems like Billy Donovan is very much so now trusting his assistant coaches a lot more. Like you see it, especially in clutch times. It's Wes Unseld Jr. up, walking back and forth, coaching that defense. It's not Billy Donovan, right? Not to say that Billy Donovan doesn't still have a place in the game plan and stuff, but he's trusting his assistants. How much do you think that plays a part into how sustainable this new style is for the Bulls?
It plays a major role. And you don't really hear a panel of guys kind of excited about new assistant coaches. But we were all like, okay, now Mo Cheeks is gone, so on and so forth. Now we have assistant coaches that can come in and change some of the culture for this team. And defensively is a major thing. Even with the last second plays against Orlando, it wasn't your typical Billy Donovan inbound plays that were taking place when they were trying to close out that game. Whereas a couple of seasons ago, they couldn't get the ball inbounded at all. And it still turned out that they couldn't get the ball inbounded with Patrick Williams, let the ball bounce off his hands. That's neither here nor there. But they have changed schematically, at least, to the point where it's affecting winning basketball.
Yeah, and that is those little things. Like I get it. We've had a roster change. We've replaced a lot of the older players with more young, athletic players that fit this run up and down style, right? And then you got to actually change the system to best suit that. And for the last few years, we've really had to play a specific style because DeMar's been here. That's not to like hate on DeMar, whatever. It is what it is. The Kings are going through it now. If you watch the Kings play, you could tell a difference between how they're running their half-court offense this year versus last year. You just have to adapt when you have somebody like DeMar DeRozan. And so while some of the positives are gone, like when Bulls can't buy a bucket, that's when DeMar used to go to work and get to the free throw line. They're adapting to that now, but you're seeing that at least the style of play it suits everybody else in this roster so much. And even like a guy like Nikola Vucevic, who I thought in moving to an up-tempo style was going to completely get left in the dust. He's having one of his best seasons as a Bull.
Yeah, he's having one of his best seasons, period.
Yeah.
If he keeps playing like this, he's going to be an all-star, and that's crazy to think. So, man, listen. Again, we not trying to poo-poo all over DeMar DeRozan, but he bogged down the offense. He really did, and we were screaming it, especially during the live calls over on the Shot Bulls podcast. If you ain't following that, what's wrong with you? With C-Dub and Bobby. But we used to always say it like, oh, man, here go DeMar DeRozan, my turn DeRozan. Even when the Bulls were up in a few games, because they didn't blow a lot of teams out during his tenure here. But when the Bulls would be up 15-20, you got Kobe cooking, you got Zach LaVine cooking. Then Zach LaVine will slow down the pace and have to play his style to try to get his shots up. And it was annoying to see.
Yeah, and then so it's just a much more fluid style overall, and I think that this is just going to be whatever ends up happening for the Bulls season. Whatever the season ends up shaking out, you can say that they've made a change, and this isn't just a change just for this season. This is a change where you are investing in your players, and this like it just can get better and better. Now you just got to keep adding to that and adding wrinkles to it. But this feels like the first time the Bulls have a scheme offensively, an identity, I guess I should say, offensively that just makes sense for the team. So
no, it's the second time. It was the first time with Lonzo Ball.
That's
they
true.
had an identity, and now they have baby Lonzo Ball with Josh Giddey. Now that they have Josh Giddey doing all the same things that Lonzo Ball was doing before he got hurt, hitting the three at a high clip, executing the offense, getting the break going, running at a faster pace. We're seeing what AK and Eversley, what they wanted for this team to do and what they did to the tune of being first place in the Eastern Conference until Lonzo went down that fateful season. Yeah. And now it's back to
they beat no top teams. Then the difference between that team and this team is that team was like 1-9 against playoff teams that were slated to go to the playoffs. This team was like 2-1. It's been crazy to see. So it's a lot different.
Yeah, well, not from a win-loss perspective. I'm just talking about a style
from
of play.
Stylistic possession. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That's what they wanted, and that's what they have now. It's kind of similar to what they were looking for when they first put this team together.
That's a fact. That's a fact. All right, we're going to next up get into Zach LaVine's shoulder sprain, which I thought was going to be the only shoulder injury we had to talk about, but no, because we're the Chicago Bulls. But first, we got to get to a message from Game Time. All right, Bulls fans, man, listen, NBA is going on. The Bulls right now are 3-2. NHL is back as well. The Blackhawks haven't started off as good as the Chicago Bulls, but they still got time to turn around. They're 3-7 on the season. But where can you go and watch these guys? You can get tickets on Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Plus, you can toggle all-in pricing. Toggling this feature on shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Again, because some of y'all broke and be trying to act like y'all surprised by the fees. Stop acting broke, man. Plus, you get a panoramic view of your seat before you even buy your ticket, so you can know exactly what you're going to be able to see from your seat with buying a ticket. And they have the lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find seats in the same section for less. They'll give you 110%. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Kev. Last topic of the day before we get up out of here. Zach LaVine's shoulder injury. He has a sprained AC joint. So this is the joint that connects your shoulder and your collarbone, somewhere up in that area. And much like we said with the Patrick Williams thing, I know we kind of talked about shoulder injuries, so it's going to be a lot of the same thing. I could Zach LaVine play if this was a playoff game? Yeah, probably. But I would not be surprised if they sit him to just be precautious when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's on the left side, and he already has trouble finishing around the rim from the left side. He has trouble dribbling with that left hand as well. So if it's any part of Zach LaVine's body that needs to be at 100% or 90% at least, it's his left side of his shoulder. Like, I don't want to see Zach LaVine trying to drive that way and be hurt. We saw it against Orlando. Every time he drove, he was grimacing and clutching at it and making faces. And again, of course, if this was a playoff game, he would be out there. Everybody that's injured right now will be out there if it was the grinded out time of the season. But this is the best time for the Chicago Bulls to be suffering these types of injuries, including Zach LaVine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's early part of the season. This is where you want those things if you're going to have them at all. I mean, of course, the idea and the hope would be to not have it at all, but that's just not realistic, unfortunately. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have to deal with things, and that's where the adversity comes at in a basketball season. And so next man up, it's going to suck because Zach LaVine is having such an efficient season this year, which is really good to see Zach LaVine have with all the doubt and things. And all that type of stuff around it. But it is what it is, man. You gotta weather the storm, and that's what this is. It's just a storm. It will pass, and we'll come out on the other side of that, and we'll still have the team that we have. And we'll see, man. I know Zach LaVine's increased efficiency and the solid play so far has made a lot of Bulls fans ask themselves, well, is this going to make it easier to trade Zach? Kev, I'm going to flip that on you. Does Zach LaVine's play actually make you want to keep Zach LaVine on this team a little bit more when you talk about the style of play that we're playing?
When we came into the season, like I was high on Zach coming into the season. I know a lot of people weren't. I think I was one of the few people that felt like Zach could play his way back onto the team if he showed that he was going to come out and be the consummate professional. Because the reality is the way he was moping and being in him and figure it out or late in last season before he went down with the injury. Ultimately, it just didn't make sense to me for the Bulls to bring him back to this team. I thought they were going to trade him either prior to the draft or prior to the season starting, but they didn't. So, and I know we all know what he's capable of. We know that he's capable of dropping 50. We also know that he's capable of dropping 25 consistently. And once they moved on from DeMar DeRozan, I felt as though that Zach LaVine was going to come in and be the player that they thought he was going to be prior to when they brought DeMar DeRozan over here. And now that he's a little bit older, now that he learned a lesson about what his value is on the market based on his attitude, not his skill set, I figured he was gonna be that OG on the team. He's still young enough to play another few years at a high level.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, I think he if he plays this way for the rest of the season, or at least until the trade deadline, he's going to be a Chicago Bull through the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I've always gone back and forth, not on if I think the Bulls should or not trade, because that's to me doesn't matter, right? Like what I think they should do or not doesn't matter. It's about what AK do I think AK will or not? And I think with this team and the fact that they have not committed to trying to maintain, like if they looked like they were making moves to be committed to trying to keep that top 10 pick, I would have a completely different perspective on it. But I do truly think, and maybe I'm just a little too hopeful, that this is a front office is like, hey, if we win, that's what we want. We're fine. All right, cool. We missed out on the pick, but we're winning. And I think if you do that with the level that Zach LaVine's playing at, that AK and Eversley would be willing to keep Zach LaVine around here.
Again, I'm not a betting man, and I've been saying it a lot. If you didn't, because I'm sure that the numbers have changed now, but if you didn't take the Bulls as an over on a 28.5, you're missing out on money. Because they had Zach, Kobe, and Vooch. Like when you got a core like that, they're veterans. They know how to put the ball in the basket. They're going to give you combined 50, 60 points a game. You just can't bet against something like that, regardless if they win games or not. This team has enough to compete every single night, especially if they're healthy.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if those season odds have gone up since then. So if you guys locked that money in at the 28.5 and got the over there, you like Kev said, you're probably safe bet to get some money. So there you guys go, unless barring injuries or anything like that. So any last thoughts, Kev, before we get up out of here, brother?
Man, it's going to be a good game tonight. I'm expecting to see a healthy dose of Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, maybe Adama Sanogo as well if Smith's not back. And then let's see if Vooch, maybe we get a quick 30 and 10, 30 and 15 from Vooch tonight, especially with Zach being out. Kobe and Vooch are going to have to carry that offensive load with Ayo coming in and maybe rounding that corner the way we need him to do and give us 15 plus tonight. But if we don't get that, it's going to be a tough game because, again, Brooklyn is not the same Brooklyn team that we've seen over the last couple of seasons. Those guys are scrappy and they're trying to get some wins.
That's a fact, man. This is Brooklyn Nets team. And I said it, hey, one thing that I did think they lose a lot of games at the start of the season, or the 2 and 3 to start. But I did say that, hey, bet on Cam Thomas, the over-under on how many shots he was going to get per game, because he's shooting. But it's going in right now as well.
Hey, he takes and makes a lot of bad shots.
Yeah, Cam Thomas is crazy, bro. Like, there's so many shots you watch Cam Thomas, you're like, no. Oh, it went in. Bet. Okay. So
crazy. He gets a lot of lift. Like, that dude jumps high to get that jumper off.
Yeah, and Cam Thomas is small. Like, I didn't realize he was 6'3", playing shooting guard. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Cam Thomas, man. But make sure you guys follow Kev, man, over at the Chicago White Sox Central and Chicago Cubs Central. Now 2 separate channels. He's killing it over there with the baseball coverage. He's also doing after hours on NBA Central. Y'all can catch him recapping games at the end of every game when he's not falling asleep because he's old. But, we're not judging him for that.
Hey, when I fall asleep, it's NBA M Central. I get up early and night for that.
That is actually hilarious, man. You guys already know where you can follow me. You can follow me at CEO Haize. And, by the way, Locked On Bulls now has a newsletter. They've been dropping it every day for 2 weeks straight now. Make sure y'all go over to lockedondaily.com and subscribe to the Locked On Bulls newsletter, where you can start your day off. Because we drop the podcast at 11 a.m. Central, 12 p.m. Eastern, you can at least still start your day off with Locked On Bulls with that daily newsletter that I dropped around 6 a.m. So make sure you guys stay in tune with us for that. We will be live today after the game, and not a full-length episode, but for a reaction to the Bulls game. Make sure you guys stay in tune with us for that as well. Love you guys. Go Bulls. See Red, y'all. And we'll see you guys tonight. Peace.
Mm-mm-mm-mm.